Welcome to the Field Sales Unscripted podcast. Today, you're going to hear my conversation between myself and JD Dupree. JD is a former police officer that moved into electrical distribution and now works in food distribution. In this conversation, he's going to tell us how important mindset is for his team. And he's also going to share how, as a director of sales, he gets out in the field and travels with his reps. He doesn't just sit in his office and direct, he actually gets down in the trenches with them. So buckle in and enjoy this show. So tell us about your journey. How did you end up in the place that you are in today?
Well, I know this is a short call, so I'm going to do it as quickly as I can. My resume reads a little bit like you mixed two people together on accident and printed it out. So I started out military, was an engineer in the military. When I got out, went to college to get an engineering degree. Ended up working at a bar like some kids do when they're going through college, and the owner was a policeman. So this guy had a lot of friends that were still working on the force come in, and long story short, it got me interested in that. I shifted gears, and then I went into law enforcement. I was a police officer for about 15 years. So it's kind of, you don't expect that to be in sales, although I have a quick story about that when we're done if you want to hear it. So from there, I left after about 15 years and went into the engineering field, believe it or not, after all. And I sort of got recruited into it by a friend who was a partner in an engineering startup. And it just was a fantastic opportunity, really good for my family. I could move them where I wanted to live for the kids' school and stuff like that. So it made sense. The company I worked for outsourced engineering services. So I did some engineering work in the beginning, started running programs, and then went into the sales side of the business. So we sold engineering services, and my biggest account was Caterpillar. So they outsourced 70% of their engineering. So we were one of their larger suppliers in the central Illinois area where their headquarters is. So I did that for about 10 years, managed the largest Caterpillar account in the company. At one point had 650 engineers globally that rolled up through me through 7 delivery centers. I spent some time in India several times a year, which was super interesting. Absolutely had a ball doing that. And it changed my food palate forever, but that's another thing.
It's a whole different story.
Yeah. And then in 2013, the engineering business with Caterpillar on the global mining side, where I was, went really south. A lot of different reasons for that, but ended up shifting gears, and I general managed a wire harness manufacturing plant in Kansas. Absolutely loved it. Did that for about 3 years. Made a move back to Illinois based on, my son going into high school and just needed to be around him. So went back, and that's when I started working in distribution. So I worked for an electrical distributor and was a district manager. So I kind of had charge over the sales and operations part of a 6-branch district, relocated to St. Louis with a promotion. And from there, ended up leaving that company, did a short stint as a director of sales in another company, and then ended up where I am now, which is sort of the whole path.
Wow. Wow. You have a very, interesting and unique path. And I think that, going from law enforcement into and ending up in sales, it's not a path that we often think that people will take. And so my question for you is, what are some of the lessons that you learned during your career in law enforcement that you apply to the work that you do today?
Yeah, which brings in that story. I once had a vice president. I was in a meeting and I remarked on something in the meeting, and the vice president said, "What do you know about sales? You're just a cop."
Whew.
And I told him, I said, well, go to a bar at 2 in the morning and arrest a 6'5" tall biker in front of his friends without a fight and tell me you're not in sales.
Mm,
So it's really sales is a relationship based business. And no matter what AI does, no matter how uh, commoditized it is, any factor you want to throw in there, it really comes down, to your ability to connect with people. And I think I brought a lot from law enforcement into the sales world, based just on learning how to communicate, learning how to understand body language was a big thing. I would suggest that to any young salesperson. Some people have that natural ability, but a lot of people don't. And it's okay not to have that. Sales is a vocation. You should learn some tactics, and that's a big one. Is you can really uh, respond to someone with the right question, with the right response based on their body language. So a lot of those things I think translated very, very well into sales.
So, what are some of those tactics or those skills that you think are core and fundamental when you're looking for a salesperson to hire? What kind of things are you looking for?
For a person to hire,
Yeah.
um, so I think you could say, okay, you could look at my situation. Being a police officer, what would you want to hire a person that comes from that to go into a sales position, or just, I've made the jump from electrical products to food packaging products. When I took this position, I knew nothing about food packaging other than, I recognize that food has to go in packages, right? So I don't know the science behind it in the product. It's more about what the personality of the person is, what the drive is,
Mhm.
and are they coachable? Are they energetic? Do they understand people? Do they like people? Do they want to succeed? You can teach the sales side of it and the product side of it, but you can't really teach the personality. So I think the questions I ask and things I look for when I'm doing an interview and trying to bring someone on board is just to really go a couple layers deeper when you're in a conversation, and just find out what they're made of.
Yeah, and I think that I call that their inherent sales DNA, right? It's like,
Hmm.
how are they motivated? How are they driven? How do they do they self-motivate or do they need external motivation? Do they
Hmm.
have a growth mindset or do they have a fixed mindset,
Right.
right? Some of those things people don't really think of those soft skills, or as I've had a previous client say, warm fuzzies. He's like, Wesleyan, I don't
Yeah.
care about those warm fuzzies. I just need to know, can
Right.
they sell? Can they do? I'm like, but do you not realize that their ability to hunt, their ability to ask the right questions, it starts in the brain. If they don't believe they can do it, then they're never going to do it.
Absolutely. And it's a lot about accountability. I think to have a really good sales team, you there has to be accountability, and that accountability has to be to yourself first. So your ability to set a goal, your ability to stay on task, to wake up every morning early and get out there and do what you have to do to win every single day. Um, you can really see that in a person,
Yeah.
uh, when you ask them certain questions, when you talk to them more about their own personality and things that they've done before, not just, hey, do you know what a clamshell container is? I don't care about that. We'll teach them that. So,
And you mentioned something that's really important, and it's the accountability piece, right? It's I often find that sales leaders, they make excuses, so they accept excuses. And so when you're not holding yourself accountable, you can't hold somebody else accountable. When your boss asks you for a forecast at 5 p.m. and you deliver it the next day at 8, you're going to accept your salespeople saying, well, I was a little shy of quota this month. I'll make it up next month, because you've conditioned yourself to receive that. Through your walk of leadership, what kind of tools or tips have you found that have worked to hold yourself accountable?
so I think from a leadership perspective, you have got to set the tone and the direction. And this is something, I could go back and pull out of the military. It's, leading by example is a phrase that's thrown out there a lot, but it's really true. If you're pushing your team, you're not going to get as much out of them as if you're in front and everybody's pulling in the same direction. So you have to be accountable to the team. You have to be humble as a leader a lot of times. I took on a team of a mix of people in this current position, and there is nothing I can do to understand this business any deeper than some of the core people I have working for me. So I don't come in and pretend to be smarter. If the smartest guy in the room, I think I need to get out of the room. So,
You're in the wrong room.
yeah, I'm in the wrong room. So that's one of the biggest things. And I need to set objectives and remove obstacles. That's a leader's biggest job, I think, is you set the tone, let them know what they're supposed to be doing, give them all the tools that they need to succeed, and then just get the heck out of their way. I always describe it a little bit about the leadership umbrella. So I sort of hold an umbrella up over my team. There's a lot of stuff comes down from corporate, right? A lot of external noise and different things. I try to absorb and shed that off of them as much as possible. I'm the guy that needs to get in those meetings and have those conversations. I don't want them involved in all of the politics and different things that come around every day. I want them focused on selling and cultivating relationships and out there winning. So that's a lot of it, is just setting the right tone and removing the obstacles, and then you manage the outcome. Don't micromanage the activities every day. It's
good.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, you need to watch activities. I mean, CRM is a great tool. We all need it. There's that piece of it, that little big brother piece, but that's not the purpose of the tool. But if they're producing what they should be producing, they're holding themselves accountable, they're meeting and exceeding goals and doing everything. I am not going to go inside of there every day and say, you need to do more of this or do more of that. Yeah. Whatever you're doing is working, and I love it. Go do more.
Yes, yes. And, I just don't understand why all sales leaders don't get that. Like, I have this little quadrant that I show them, and it's like revenue and effort, right? And people who are in that top right quadrant, max effort, and they're hitting their target, just leave them alone. Doesn't matter if they're not doing things the way that you want to do. Do they have predictability? Like, leave them alone. But I also like something that you said is the tactics are important, but if we focus only on the tactics and not the outcome, then we're missing something. And I like to say, coach to the conversion, right? Mm-hmm. So where are we falling off? If you make 100 calls and you only convert 2%, that you're actually not doing a good job, right? So when you see, when you're coaching your reps and when you're working with them, how do you really help them understand, like, this is the challenge and let's work on this together?
So one of the biggest, I just have to spend time with them. I'm in a director, sort of a regional, I have a 19 state territory. I have regional managers that roll up to me, and they each have sales teams. So I spend time with the sales folks out in the field. I do that constantly. And it's not, of course you have some part of that is, a talent assessment, trying to understand what everyone needs. Mm-hmm. But the biggest part of it is just that leading from the front, and I can help them. It means something to a customer when, leadership shows up, and it means something to the rep on the street when you're out there with them. So coaching is it's played on the field, right? You don't coach from somewhere in an office in a different state. So that's a big part of it. And then when you do realize everybody needs to grow, if you quit learning, just give up. You should learn, right something every day. And failure is, you mentioned the 2% conversion. You should always be learning from that. Failure shouldn't be something that you shy away from. It's something that you need and you draw from. So just getting out there with them and helping them succeed, I think, is a huge part of it. And then when you recognize some areas that might need some focus, you just have to put them in a position where you are going to identify it for them in a very professional and empathetic way. You then, it's your responsibility as a leader to get them the tools they need to be successful. And if they have an area that they need to sharpen up on, you need to help them do that.
So with such a large geographical territory for you as the director of sales, how do you ensure that there's consistency across the coaching, the training, the development that all of your reps are getting?
Great question. And that I hate to always just point back to leadership, but it really makes a difference. It makes all the difference. So I have leaders in regions, and one of the things that I like to do is you need to have a cadence, a coaching communication cadence.
Yeah.
So I have a bi-monthly meeting with every person on the team, and we go over a lot of things during that meeting, but all that whittles down to the weekly coaching, that the regional managers do with their sales reps. So I think that's got to be key, is just the communication. And then the tone that I set, I have to make sure that my regional managers are deploying that and setting it, keeping that up with their sales reps so that consistency's there.
Mm-hmm. And so and I think I like how you kind of, you lead from the top and from the bottom, right? So you're looking
Mm-hmm.
over the organization, but you're also getting into the field with the reps, right? Like, so you're understanding the challenges that they're having. You're listening to customer feedback, and it really allows you to kind of make this beautiful sandwich in the middle. So when you go out in the field with the reps and you're traveling with them, what are some tips that you could give somebody who's sitting in your seat as a director who doesn't manage the salespeople directly? What kind of,
Mm-hmm.
so first, before you give tips, I want you to give these are things you shouldn't do, because I see a lot of things that people shouldn't do and they don't realize. So give us some things you shouldn't do, and then you can wrap that up with things that you think are best practices.
I think something you shouldn't do is, don't cling to old beliefs. Always be open to bring on a new idea. And I think, growth, how is it that I heard it said? Growth is the price of admission to get to the next level. And so if you just stick where you're at, and the type of thinking you have, and the way you approach your job every day without trying to grow, you're not getting anywhere. So I think that's the biggest thing I would say. And I think some tips I would give: look at your day and map it out. Block your time. If you're going to be a winner, you need to plan out your priorities for your day, because everybody knows, especially in sales, your day can just vaporize on you. You may understand in your mind when you start the day that you've got these things to do, and at the end of the day, you realize you didn't get any of it done because the whole world, blows up. So think about it like this. And this is one of the things I tell all of the people that roll up to me, is think about being busy versus being productive. You can be busy and not necessarily be productive. You just need to focus on what moves the needle. And that may involve making some decisions about customers. That may involve making decisions about where you spend your time. I think everybody knows that they've had a customer that you don't really make any money off of, that just consumes all of your time. You have to make good decisions and get a good return on your time investment every single day.
Yeah.
And if you're not thinking about it and planning it out, you're going to fail at it. If you leave it to chance how your day goes, you're not going to make as much progress as you want to make.
That's good. That's good. Those are some really great tips. And it's I have, so I'm in the process of, I've submitted my book to the first round of editing, and
Awesome.
And my book it's for field salespeople, but it's all about mindset over skill set.
Mm.
And you really hit on a lot of the mindset pieces, right? Don't have a fixed mindset. Take ownership of your time. And it's like those small tweaks are more important than the best cold calling script ever. Or I can't teach you how to ask good discovery questions if you're stuck in your head and you're scared of being rejected, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that like all of the things that you're talking about are really, really so important when we think about building thriving sales organizations.
It's interesting you say that, because here's what I would tell new people. Don't count, when you talked about that 2% conversion rate, don't count those 2%, count the no's.
Mm-hmm.
Count the no's, because the more that you have, it's all about the laws of probability, right? If the more contact you have out in the field with potential customers, the more you're going to clear.
Yeah.
So the more no's you assemble, by contrast, the more success you're going to have, and those no's can turn into yeses all of a sudden sometimes.
It can.
And the other thing I'd say is just be creative. There's a lot of people on LinkedIn that you can follow that do some really cool stuff. I think it's Stu. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name. I'm embarrassed about that. But the contact marketing, how to market yourself. How many times do you walk into business and just drop your card down because the guy wouldn't see you? And that's going to go straight in the trash. It does. How do you make yourself different when you show up? Give them an experience, not some piece of marketing material that is going to turn into a coaster, right? Or get tossed in the trash can. Be creative, be yourself. There's nothing stopping you from, using your humor, doing something to make you differentiate, and then know what your company's value prop is. Be a consultative seller. Don't just be, that typical old car salesman mentality. You're dead to me. I don't want anything go away. If you're not here to buy today, make yourself into an expert on what you're selling, and be consultative.
Yeah, and be the expert. Learn to be the trusted advisor, not just the brochure or donut person that's dropping things off.
Right.
I think that
Because your solution may not be the cheapest, and almost always isn't. And so they need to have some other value that they see in you, and not just the relationship, that you're in their corner and you're helping them out, you're helping them succeed, you're helping them save money, you're bringing a value to the table that's beyond what shows up in a truck the next day.
absolutely, absolutely. So in the where we are in today's time, at the time of recording, there's a lot of economic uncertainty. There's a lot of things that are happening out in the world. What do you think is driving your sales team at the moment?
So we're a distributor, so we don't technically manufacture anything. We take other people's products, and being in distribution is a challenge. There's this sort of triangle, where you sell to the same customers your competitors do, and what you're selling to them is the same products that your competitors are selling to them. So there has to be that value brought to the table. Otherwise it's just a race to the bottom, and who can sell something for half a point less. So I think what's really driving them right now is just having to be agile and creative. The tariffs are the big issue right now. And how do you sell around that? How do you mitigate that risk for a customer? And what can you do to be creative? And in the last couple of years, we've had automation and AI, and how is that impacting the business, and how does that change? You need to be agile and, be well informed at what's going on in your industry and in your markets. They're one of the biggest challenges that we face in distribution right now, and I think it's a post-COVID issue, is just the rush the direct to consumer sales that happen now. So our suppliers will sell direct to a customer sometimes after you open the door for them, So it's tough. It's a tough business world out there, and you just have to be aggressive, relentless, and you have to be willing to be agile and change it up every single day on the drop of a hat to stay competitive.
That's really good. And I work with a lot of distribution companies, and I think the thread that connects them, whether it's electrical distribution or food distribution, is that it's easy to fall into being a transactional commodities kind of just order taker. And if you're hitting your numbers, then you just collect orders, right? And something happens, like an economic shift. A organization I'm working with they're in California a couple years ago, when all the tech companies were like, yeah, we're not building anything else, we're not doing anything else, they took a huge hit, right? And that's when the eyes were peeled back that, oh, our salespeople actually don't know how to sell. They're actually just order takers. They're not salespeople.
Yeah. That's another thing. There's a way that so a person can either they can either buy their wisdom, or you either buy your wisdom or you borrow it, right?
Yeah.
So you buy it through experience, and that takes a lot of time to build something up. So like I said, this is a vocation. Sales is a vocation, and you can make a lot of money in sales. It's nothing to joke about. The sales sort of has that bad reputation in a lot of people's minds, but you need to be sharp and educated, and you have to have a really good sales process that you stand on. You need to learn how to ask the right questions. You need to learn when to ask the right questions, and do not stop learning, and go out and borrow some of that. Don't you're going to learn it too, but go out and borrow it. There's nothing wrong with taking somebody's great idea and putting it into motion for yourself.
That's good. I mean, because the thing is, especially even like in my world of sales training and sales coaching, leadership development, the concepts that most sales trainers teach are similar. But it's about the delivery. It's about your experience. It's about your twist on it, right? And so take something that you've learned and apply it and make it yours. And that's what really separates the people who are just, mediocre to the ones who are great. They learn something, they take it, they apply it, and they make it better.
Oh, yeah. And you just never stop. The best salespeople, and I've got some working for me who are just fantastic. And then I've got, we used to have a saying, and this came from the military, but it was also in the police world, where you have somebody that's close to retirement, and we used to call them retired on duty, right? So they're comfortable where they are. They're not going to put another ounce of work into anything. They're just going to cruise through to the end, and they don't necessarily have to be close to retirement to be sort of in that mode, in that mindset. But I've got some people, one in particular that I'm thinking of right now, that has an enormous book of business. And you would think that it would consume all of his time, but he's still out there knocking on doors and opening them. And because he loves it. That's what he loves, is the hunt and getting that first order and building that into something, and you just can't stop him, so get into it and love it. Don't get into it. You need to go to work every day going, man, I can't believe I get to do this, and if you have that attitude, you're going to exceed every expectation of your own and every expectation that's put upon you.
Yeah, I remember being in field sales, having that healthy pipeline and that healthy book of business. It's, a PO just came in, but I'm out on the road calling on a new prospect at a trade show, doing this or doing that. It's like you're always thinking about the next thing. You're not just sitting in your office waiting for the PO to come in to celebrate, right? To take the rest of the afternoon off. again, it's separating the mediocre from the goods, the greats. And I think that it's important that you, as you said, invest in yourself. Focus on the areas of skill gaps that you have. Ask your company to
Mhm.
invest in you. If they won't do it, then you do it yourself. Listen to podcasts like this. Like, do the work that you need to actually get to where you want to go. So,
Absolutely.
you have shared a lot of your story and your background, and I'm curious, in the next 5 years, where do you see your organization that you oversee going?
I see massive growth. Our company has just gone through a little bit of a reorganization. We've taken the sales out of the market leadership and put it into a sales leadership, and then we've segmented it out. We have four main segments. We sell into retail, we sell into redistribution, so we would sell to smaller regional distributors. We sell into processors, which is mine, and then we sell direct into like grocery.
Mm,
So um, through that specialization, you are able to take a salesperson, train them more on the product that is going to be specific, to the customers they're calling on, and set more specific goals for that group. And I just see massive growth
yeah.
only, if only because we've now focused on a segment
Mhm.
and put the right leadership in place, and everyone is empowered. So that's the big thing for my team, is expanding and growing, and I'm already seeing it. So it's exciting. There's been, COVID was tough. That whole time period with supply chain, with
Mhm.
materials issues, it did change a lot of things, and we still see that. And because of all that fluctuation, you've got a lot of deflation going on. So you may see even more disruption as we kind of smooth out this tariff activity. But it's all about hiring the right people and empowering them. And I think the sales organization that I'm in, my boss and the leadership in the company are all in the right mindset. And I think that just opens up the floodgates. So I see us really making a difference. And I'd like to, I have my own goals. We set goals in the beginning of the year on top of a certain percent of growth, which every organization that sales is going to have a percent of growth figure to hit.
Yeah.
I said, what more are you going to give? And each individual person had to come up with that,
Wow.
and it's something, I didn't set a limit. If what else do you think you can do, and where do you want to be because of it?
Yeah.
You got to do this for your own reason,
Yeah.
and we're getting there, and the business is challenging. Like I said, it is a street fight
It is.
every single day.
Every day is
So
so I love
I'm
it.
super optimistic.
And I think I'm a little bit biased just because as a salesperson, and even when I moved into sales leadership, I always worked within organizations where we had what I call a specialist sales force.
Mhm.
So we focused on a product, we focused on a sector. So we got to be like the experts. And I mean,
Right.
we would win our close rate, our win rate. It was like once we got into a deal, like we had it because we weren't trying to sell everything. We weren't trying to do
Mhm.
everything and know a little bit about this and this and have to pull in this technical support here or that there. So the
Yeah.
way that you guys have restructured, as you said, you see tremendous growth. And I agree, because the more we can allow salespeople, especially salespeople, to focus, because they're already thinking about a million things and all the stuff they have to do, the more
Mhm.
we allow them to focus, the more the company as a whole benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a different sales cycle for each of those segments. So
Mhm.
a salesperson that had to represent multiple segments in a market, um, were sort of spinning their wheels. So I think it's a good adjustment. And I was brought on board along with some other leadership, uh, because of this change in the company, and I think it's been well worth it. So I'm excited to see how things go. We're having a good month this month, and it's really, really good stuff. We're doing a little bit of training and getting the whole team together next week in one location. Try to do that at least once a year. bring some valuable training to them, and also have some downtime, have some fun as a team. So it's good stuff.
That's awesome. All right. So, final words. I want to ask you this question. If you could tell young JD, who was just getting into field sales, if you could give him insight, what would you tell him?
I think one of the hardest things I had to learn, and I think a lot of young salespeople get into it and have to learn, is do not worry one bit about what anybody thinks of you.
Mm.
I think it's a natural human characteristic is to be concerned, about how you present and how people respond to you. But you need to just sort of be a little bit fearless and have a thicker skin. I think that's one thing I would tell young people: just jump in. Don't hesitate because you are afraid you may not have the answer. You won't have every answer. You need to know where to go get it, and people will appreciate that. That's one big thing. And the other thing I think is set a goal for yourself every year. I love a vision board. I think most people are visual learners.
Mm-hmm.
When you have something put in front of you, if one thing I've always done, it's kind of silly maybe, but you have passwords for everything, right? Every darn thing you get into nowadays, you can have a password for it. Something I have as a goal, I'll mix into a password every single day, multiple times a day. I type that in, and it's in my mind all the time. That may be if I'm looking at maybe getting a new car,
Yes.
my dream car, or whatever it is that you've got put out there for yourself, just do something every day that keeps that in focus. And then, just be true to your own self.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you do, you do for yourself, your family, for some reason. Be grounded in that.
That's so good. That's so good. Thank you so much, JD, for your time, your talent, and your expertise today. If people want to get in contact with you, what's the one best way?
LinkedIn. So it's just JD Dupree, just the two letters JD. LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn. I think it's a great tool. I met you through there. I think that no matter what kind of sales you're in, the networking potential on that tool is fantastic, and I'm very responsive there. If anybody were to want to get a hold of me, that'd be the best way to do it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again. This has been an amazing episode, and I appreciate your time today.
Hey, you got it. Thank you, and good luck with the book.
Awesome. Thank you.